Okay, so we are starting Hilchos Korban Pesach. What we intended to do yesterday is to go through the Torah B'chsav on the psukim. Torah B'chsav on the Mitzvos of Korban Pesach, because you can't do Mishnah Torah without the psukim. But then we spent the whole shiur on how you can't do Mishnah Torah without the psukim. Okay, so and then we read some psukim. But today we're going to begin the actual mitzvos. And when we go through the mitzvos, this advice was given to me by Rabbi Zucker about how to, what's the best in terms of the Mishnah Torah, the Rambam in one of his letters writes to somebody, learn the Mishnah Torah and make it your book. So I just asked Rabbi Zucker, who's one of the biggest Rambam experts I know, how do you make the Mishnah Torah your book? So one of the several pieces of advice he gave me is he said, take every mitzvah and then read it in 4 locations. The Sefer Mitzvos, which is the first thing the Rambam wrote, the Minion HaMitzvos, which is the list at the beginning of the Mishnah Torah, the Koseres, which is the formulation at the beginning of each section, and then the first halacha or first couple halachos where he's actually spelling out the mitzvah. And if you do that with all taryag, you'll have a really, really, really solid overview and foundation, and you'll have the entire, outline of Torah at your fingertips, right? So what we're going to do, what the plan is to do 3 out of 4 of those things. We're going to do the Sefer Mitzvos, Minion Mitzvos, and the Koseres, and then we're going to pick which mitzvos or halachos we want to focus on, and then do that for the next part. We're not going to do everything for that, but we're going to start, because I accidentally put the packet in the wrong order, with the Koseres. So that is the thing that looks like Hilchos Korban Pesach. And we're just going to read through those. I didn't do it by accident, because I knew that Rambam Bekius has his footnotes on the side, and I thought that might help us to orient ourselves. And then we'll do the Minion Mitzvos, then we'll do the Sefer Mitzvos. Okay, we're going to do reverse order. Okay, so Hilchos Korban Pesach, and we mentioned yesterday, this is in the beginning of Sefer Korbanos, which is about the Korbanos of individuals, as opposed to Sefer Avoda, which is the Beis HaMikdash and the Korbanos of the Tzibor. Okay, so Hilchos Korban Pesach. Yesh bichlalan sheish esrei mitzvos. There are 16 mitzvos in these halachos. The arba mitzvos say ushtei mitzvos lo say. So 4 positive mitzvos and 12 negative mitzvos. Zeu pratan, and these are they. You see where we are?
No.
It is on the 3rd physical page, or if this were PDF, it'd be page 5. Yeah.
Where on the page?
At the top. Yesh bichlalan sheish esrei mitzvos. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so and we're at number 1. Okay, so V'zehu Pratan, these are their details. Okay, number 1, lishchot haPesach bismano, to slaughter the Pesach in its time. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and do the footnotes on the side, because even though he's going to have some spoiler stuff, I feel like just to get a basic idea of the mitzvos, the earlier we get that, the better. So he said, Rambam Bekius says, lishchot haPesach bismano, lishchot korban haPesach biyom yudalad Nisan achar chatzos hayom. To shech the Korban Pesach on the day of the 14th of Nisan after midday. And by the way, if we have questions, raise them now, because even though we're not going to the halachos yet, I want to have questions on the radar as early as possible, so that when we go through the different sources, then we'll note if there's any clues to the answers. Okay. Okay. Also, just another thing, the Hilchos Korban Pesach is going to go in a logical order, presumably, right? You have to shech the Pesach before you can eat the Pesach. So it's going to go, we saw yesterday, it's Shchitas of Pesach, then Pesach Sheni, and then Achilas of Pesach. Okay, mitzvah number 2, Shelo lizboch oso al ha-chametz, to not shecht it on chametz. So what does that mean? Shelo lizboch oso al chametz. It's a weird mitzvah.
When can you use chametz for any korban?
So this is not talking about using chametz in a korban. Okay, that's clue number 1. You're right about that. What do you say?
Perhaps I have two explanations.
Okay.
This one's a little more wild.
Okay.
Not putting it on top of chametz and then shechting it.
Okay, that would be the most literal interpretation, right?
But maybe not shechting it with the intention of eating it with chametz.
Okay, that is less wild. Okay, but both of them are not correct. So let's see the Rambam Bekius. Shelo lizboach, so we're footnote 2, or it's not footnote 2, side note 2. Shelo lizboach also al hachametz. Shelo lishchot es Pesach ke'shadayin yesh chametz b'reshus ha'adam. You're not allowed to shech the Pesach when you still own chametz.
Yeah. So you can shech the before Pesach.
So you are shechting before Pesach, right? But it's after the zman when you have to get rid of the chametz, which he says next probably. Ella chayv levayrus chametz ve'achar kach lishkod as a Pesach. You have to get rid of the chametz and then shech the Pesach. So yeah.
Isn't there Risa?
So the lo sase is doraisa, and the reason why the Rambam uses this weird lashon is that's the actual lashon of the pasuk.
No. That's not what I mean. When this is doraisa, you have to do it by a certain hour. Just doesn't like is doraisa. They have to isn't like. Is there worse that you have to do it before Pesach, or just have to do it before Pesach?
When you say do it, do you mean the shchitas of Pesach or the getting rid of the chametz?
I was doing the biur comments.
Yeah, so I believe that is a machlokas rishonim, isn't it? About whether, well, okay, I got to brush up on this. Let's look at the Rambam here. Hold on just a second here. We're going to look at, this is not in your packet, but, oh, you know what? I should get Mishnah Torahs for you as well. You have yours. There's one for you.
Thank you.
When he comes back. Okay, so look at Sefer Zmanim. I'm not sharing the whole screen. I think I am. So Sefer Zmanim, Hilchos Chametz Umata, which is the third section or the fourth section, the fifth section. And we might as well read these because this will be good stuff. Also, we're just going to read the Koseres. You know, I should get one also so I can more readily play page numbers. Yep, we're going to read that. Okay, so tell me when you got it, Yosef. Okay, so Hilchos Korban yesh bichlal and shmona mitzvos. There are 8 mitzvos here. Shlosh mitzvos to say v'chamish mitzvos lo say. 3 positive and 5 negative. Zehu prata. I mean, these are the details. So number 1 is the one that we want. Number 1 and 2 are the ones we're interested in. Number 1, shlo lechol chametz biyom arba'asar mechatzos hayom ulamala. So Rambam holds it's asur midoraisa to eat chametz on the 14th of Nisan from midday, from chatzos and onward, but that's not the same isur achila as eating chametz on the 7 days of Pesach. In other words, I think we experientially relate to it as when you have to stop eating chametz from midday on Erev Pesach and onwards, but really from midday on Erev Pesach until Pesach starts is one deoraisa, and then on the 7 days of Pesach is another deoraisa. And in fact, it's different chiyuvim, okay, which we'll see in a second. Let's just see his mitzvos. We're doing Hilchos Chametz U'Matzah, just going over the mitzvos here, not in the packet, but in this open book here that's open to the right page. So number 1 was not to eat chametz on the day of the 14th of Nisan from midday and onwards. 2, lahashbis seor me'arbasar, to get rid of leaven from the 14th of Nisan. Okay, so that according to the Rambam is doraisa. Okay, it's biur chametz, but I believe there's a machlokas rishonim. I really got to review this, but about whether about what the biur is. In other words, is it just to be mevatel chametz, or is the destroying of it part of the thing? I have to look and see whether that's actually correct or not. Okay, 3, shlo lechol chametz kol shiva, not to eat chametz all 7 days of Pesach. 4, shlo lechol taroves chametz kol shiva, not to eat a mixture of chametz all 7 days, which is a separate isur. Okay, in other words, it's not just that we're machmir on a mixture because it's not batel, but there's it's a separate lo saseh. Please stop that. Sorry, it's a little long. 5, shlo yira'eh chametz kol shiva, not that chametz should not be seen for all 7 days. And 6, shlo yimatze chametz kol shiva. So what do those mean practically? That they shouldn't be seen or not be found. Doesn't mean that you can't look at chametz. It should not be seen and should not be found.
Just not big enough for you to be able to make it out.
But what's the isser? Where's this prohibiting you to do?
In any place where you would be able to find it.
I would cut you off right at when you said not to have it. Okay, it's not to own chametz, right? So you cannot own chametz on Pesach, right? And it's 2 lo sasehs that both prohibit that, right? And it's also a weird, complicated thing because technically speaking, when it's asur b'hana, you can't own it. So the Torah does a weird thing by creating an artificial type of ownership and then excluding it from your ownership. But for experiential purposes, it means that we can't own it. Yeah.
There's something have to have a certain size in order to have a status of even existing into this realm of.
Yes, it does.
Even?
Yeah, it has to. Yeah, it does, and that would be, you'd find that in the in these halachos and hilchos coming to mata, which we're not going to look into right at the second. Yeah.
So a question about the weird type of artificial ownership.
I also don't want to get into that, but you can ask it.
Okay.
But yeah.
Why or does this also apply to stuff that you sell in the heaviest of air quotes?
Yeah, we're definitely not getting into selling comments right now. Okay, onward. 7, lechol matzah b'leilei Pesach, to eat matzah on the nights of Pesach, and then 8, l'saper b'yitzis mitzrayim b'oso halayla, to tell the story of Yitzis Mitzrayim on that night. Okay, so the reason why we went here is because you see that there is an issur to eat chametz on the 14th of Nisan after chatzos, and that. Oh, and then also to get rid of leaven from the 14th, okay? And that corresponds time-wise to the first one in Hilchos Korban Pesach, or sorry, the second one in Hilchos Korban Pesach, shelo lizboach oso al chametz, not to shech the Korban Pesach while you still own chametz. Yeah.
The reason I was asking was, is it by the point where you can shech the Korban Pesach, have you reached the point where chametz is considered not yours?
Good question. Let me verify that. I don't recall. Let's find out.
Can you ask the question again?
Okay. I was wondering about the point where it's saying you cannot shech while in Pesach. Is that
the point?
No, where it says you cannot shech the Korban Pesach while you own chametz? Is this after the point where just saying it's deraisa level, chametz is considered not yours, and if someone takes it, you cannot prosecute them because then you're just being a assaulter and a thief if they take what's not yours?
One of the first things we said in the shiur was you can't check the Korban Pesach while you still own comments.
Right. I'm looking. Yeah. So yeah.
Is this sort of implying that you're saying? I feel like what you're talking about is the fact that the definition of ownership by like Karbon is a bit stricter, right? And so therefore you're adding like a level of like, even though by deraisa we find
so
just have to, you still can't because by Karbon you still own it.
No, for 2 reasons, and they're both complicated reasons. Okay, so the first one is what does it mean to own something? Like legally, what does it mean to own something?
I guess to have it in your possession.
But that's just
an opinion on it at some point. And
so that's how it gets into your ownership, right? But what does ownership give you the rights to do?
Sell it, you consume it.
Right. So to benefit from it, right? So to really benefit from it, whether through eating, selling, giving, right? So the problem is like this: is once the Torah says that chametz is asur to own. Sorry, once the Torah says chametz is asur to benefit from, so then you cannot have an ownership over it. So,
sure.
so what that does is let's say the zman of the issur of owning chametz hits, right? Like the time. So if I own chametz, so really I should get rid of my chametz before that point. But once that time hits, if I am caught with chametz at that time, I violate the issur. But now it's no longer in my ownership. So in order to
what happened? How did it suddenly become not ownership?
Because chametz becomes asur to benefit from.
Right.
And like if it's like it's not subject to ownership. Like, okay, I'm going to give a weird analogy here. Okay, it's like you could do kiddushin to a woman who you're able to marry. But if you try doing kiddushin to a woman who it's asur to marry, the kiddushin just is not valid at all, right? So you can't. So it's analogous to that. It's not the same thing. But if you if chametz is asur for you to own, to benefit from, then you can't own it. Like the Torah removes it from your property. So now the thing is that there is an issur to own chametz on Pesach. So what the Torah does is it creates a artificial like legal status of ownership in order to make you able to be over the issur.
That way you can't just be like, oh, I don't have to get rid of it. I'll just wait until it's not by default not ownable.
Right. Yeah. And so what Yosef was asking is on the 14th of Nisan. So definitely on Pesach itself that would apply, but this special issur on the 14th of Nisan that starts at midday to own chametz. Sorry, now I'm losing track of my own mind. I'm
still not sure why they need to do that artificially when they could just say, just because you don't halachically, like, just because you're not supposed to be able to benefit from it at this point because there's some like status change in it halachically, doesn't stop you from benefiting from it. We also need to make sure that we also need to acknowledge that you can benefit from it. And if you do, then that's still a problem. Like, you don't even have to own it to benefit from it. I could benefit from someone else's comments. That's still a problem, right? Like,
right, but that wouldn't be a problem of owning it. That would be a problem of benefiting from it.
That's my point.
Right.
Is that like, if that problem still stands, then why do I need to add an extra level of ownership to make sure I don't do it when benefiting from it is already its own obstacle?
Right. I need to review that, and then I'll try to review it for tomorrow. Okay. But Yosef's question about whether it is out of your ownership at this point. So I really should have just looked at the Koseres. The answer is no, because he says it's usher to eat chametz from maybe that's not. Maybe I don't know the answer to this also. Okay, so I don't know the answer to this question also. This is also, again, I was preparing to give a shiur on Hilchos Korban Pesach. I have to review all the chametz stuff if we want to do chametz stuff. Okay, so let's go on Hilchos Korban Pesach. Okay, so did we read this? Yeah, we did. Okay, fine. All right, back to Hilchos Korban Pesach in the packet. Gimel. We're at Gimel. Shelo talin emurav. All right, so what does that mean? So literally means to not let I always forget how to translate emurim. Is that the guts? Let's see. So talin is from lina, which is to be overnight, to go overnight. So shelo talin, not from tala, which is what you're thinking of, which is similar. Shelo taniach es ha'imurim ad haboker, ela hakrev es kulam v'soref osam al mizbeach. V'ha'imurim him, I'll translate in a second. Ha'imurim him hachalakim hakrevim al mizbeach. So the imurim are all of the parts that you put onto the mizbeach, and this lo saseh is to not leave the imurim until the morning, rather offer all of them and burn all of them on the mizbeach. So in other words, you're bringing the Korban Pesach on the afternoon of the 14th, and you really should burn it on the mizbeach then. But if you leave it over until the morning, then you're over this isser. Okay.
Should let them hang out.
Oh yeah, it's a good way to remember it. Miloshem hadvarim shamar Hashem lahaktir. Okay, fine. 4 is lishkot Pesach Sheni. Okay, to shecht Pesach Sheni, and the Rav Makbili on the side says Pesach Sheni Korban Pesach B'yom Yodalad B'Iyar, the 14th, the Korban Pesach on the 14th of Iyar, L'mi shelo asa Pesach Rishon b'moado, to the person who didn't do the Pesach in its time. So this is one of these mitzvos where, like, Rambam says that not every mitzvah to say do you have to do. There's some mitzvahs to say that kick in when there are conditions. So it's not, even though the Rambam formulates it to shecht the Pesach Sheni, we're not all obligated to do that. It's that if you miss Pesach Rishon for one of the acceptable reasons, or whatever, for one of the reasons, then you're obligated to do this one for Pesach Sheni, but it's not on every Jew. Okay, 5, lechol basar Pesach al matzah umaror b'leili chamisha asar, to eat the meat of Pesach on matzah and maror on the nights of the 15th of Nisan. 6, lechol basar Pesach Sheni al matzah umar b'leila chamisha asar l'chodesh hasheni, to eat the meat of the Pesach Sheni on matzah and maror on the nights of the 15th on the second month, which is Iyar. Okay. 7, shelo yochal na umuvushal, not to eat the Korban Pesach if it is na. So na is partially cooked according to the Rambam. I don't know if that's machlokas rishonim, but for the footnote 7 says basar tsalui ma'at, meat that's roasted partially, she'enu roya l'machal adam, that's not for human consumption. And then muvushal, footnote says, muvushal b'mayim, is cooked in water. Right. So the Korban Pesach, how's the Korban Pesach cooked? Roasted, purely over the fire. That's it, right? So if you cook it in water, or if it's partially roasted, then it's usher to eat that.
Wait, water is considered also roasting?
No, water is considered bishul, and then roasting means without any liquids.
Okay, so repeat the part about why is it usher to have it boiled in water? So
it's interesting. This isser, according to the Rambam's formulation, includes 2 unacceptable ways to eat it. One is partially roasted, the other is cooked in liquid.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah,
it's not fully roasted.
Right, but the thing is I think, if I remember correctly, I think the Ralbag quotes them as 2 separate lo sases, not to eat it partially roasted or to eat it, and then that's one, and then the other one's to not eat it cooked in liquid. Yeah, it is weird that it's one. 8, shlo yoti mi basar pesach chutz lachavura. You cannot bring the meat of the pesach outside of the group, right? So we mentioned that yesterday, that you have to eat it in groups. 9, shlo yochal mimenu mishumad, that someone who is a mishumad cannot eat it. You know what a mishumad is?
No.
Anyone?
Wait, is it like amputated or no?
Only if you're speaking very allegorically. Mishum, what's a, okay, it's
one-eye blind?
no. Mishuman means an apostate, someone who converted to another religion. Okay, or let's see how the Rambam defines it. That's the word apostate in English. The Rambam defines it footnote 9. Shlo yochal mimenu mishumad, shlo lahachil basar pesach liYisrael shenish tamed, not to feed the meat of the pesach to an Israelite who has apostatized. Shneimar, it says kol ben nechar lo yochal bo. Any literally son of a foreigner may not eat from it. Klomar Yisrael shenilve libnei nechar va'avad avodah zarah kamosam, meaning a Jew who has attached himself to the non-Jews and worshipped avodah zarah with them, lo yochal bo, may not eat it. Yeah.
Is the avodah zarah do attach themselves to the non-Jews?
Avodah zarah specifically.
Okay, so it can't just be the majority of Jews who have attached themselves to non-Jews.
No, yeah,
But
yeah, it's not sociological.
What's the root of that? Shema?
So it's there's a word that we use in modern Hebrew called shmad, right? Which I think in biblical Hebrew means to destroy, like lahashmi, laharog, la'abed is kol haYehudim. So when we talk about the word shmad in like halacha context nowadays, we mean like a shmad is a decree that is passed to like annihilate Jews or to mass convert them. So I'm assuming that like Yisrael Meshumad comes from that, like someone who converted under pressure for, going to another religion. Let me just see really quickly in the dictionary.
Kind of interesting. It's like so similar to Shema, like in the sound, but it's the opposite. It's like instead of like listening, it's like denying.
Yeah, right. Yeah. According to
like that kind of stuff.
well, where you would find this kind of stuff in a legitimate way is there's the whole machlokas about whether shorashim are 2 letters or 3 letters. Right. So we hold that they're 3 letters, but if I think that's what we're taught in school. But if you hold there's 2 letters, then it's possible that there's a relationship between shin mem daled and shin mem ayin. I don't know. Yeah.
Version, but there's about the machlokas people who are saying it's 2. Are they saying all are 2 letters or just that a lot are?
So as I say again,
the people who are saying that there are 2 letter shorashim, are they saying all shorashim are 2 letters?
Mm-hmm.
The people who hold that it's 3 letters, though, there are some that are claimed to be 4 letters.
Right. Yeah.
So what would the 2-letter side say about that?
I don't know. Not sure. Yeah. This is what the grammar wars were fought over. Yeah. So the Torah dictionary says that shmad literally means to be exterminated or destroyed. In what does PA stand for? PA stands for bile. Jastrow says caused to apostatize. Yeah, I would have thought that would be a latter meaning.
Go back to the Arabic for a bit. What is that? I can't make out the letters.
Here?
I can't see the rest of it.
Make it bigger. That's Syriac. Syriac.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yes, Shmad, yeah.
Well, just say the Gemara terms is already
It's basically Arabic.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So anyway. Yeah, so here, the way the Rambam is using it, where are we in the Rambam? Rambam is using it for someone who converts to avodah zarah, but we can see that when we do the halachos. These are halachos that I want to learn, by the way. I know we're going to have to decide together, but okay. 10, shlo yachil mimenu latoshav o sakir, not to feed it. Yachil mimenu. That's a weird conjugation. Not to yachil is to feed. Mimenu from it latoshav o sakir, to a toshav, and the Rambam Bekius says to a ger toshav, right, to a non-Jew who converts to Sheva Mitzvos Bnei Noach.
Why is that weird?
I'll tell you why in a second. And then sachir, to a hired worker, nachri ha'oved etel Yehudi timur sachar, a non-Jew who works with a Jew in exchange for money. So the weird thing is like this: it's okay. So it's usher for us to feed this to ger toshav or a non-Jew who's a hired worker, right? What would you say if you are a non-Jew in one of those 2 categories? Is it usher for you to eat the Korban Pesach? No, right? Because it's not one of the Sheva Mitzvos Bnei Noach, right? But it is a weird thing. Certainly philosophically it would be usher because the Torah is prohibiting Jews from feeding it to them, and it's just a weird overlap of halacha where it's usher for us to facilitate an act on their part, but it's not usher from their laws to do the act.
Right.
What do you say, Joseph?
Honestly, what's the philosophical problem?
Well, the philosophical problem is apparently God does not want this being eaten by non-Jews for whatever reason.
Well, does have to be God doesn't want seeing non-Jews, or God's saying telling Jews it's bad for you if they eat it, but then fundamentally God doesn't care whether they eat it. He's just saying for a Jew it's bad if they eat it.
I mean, plain shot according to the psukim we read yesterday is what was the phrase? Is toshav v'sachir lo yochal bo, right? A ger toshav and a sachir may not eat from it, right? Which Torah Shabbat Peh tells us we can't. It's our isser, But seemingly, like it seems to be that they it's bad for them to eat from it. I guess we'd have to look into the philosophy in order to understand that. Yeah.
There's a modern example of this, like in a lot of investment opportunities.
Yeah.
U.S. law prevents U.S. citizens from participating in a lot of like initial public offerings. For example.
Yeah.
I'm not saying forbids them.
Yeah.
It's different.
Right.
Well, so what happens is a lot of these companies, especially like if they're from other states, or countries, they have to, in order to be in compliance with U.S. regulation, they have to put some form of like block where if they can tell that you're an American citizen, they can offer it to you.
Mm-hmm.
If you happen to get around that,
yeah,
you're not going to do yourself aren't
right.
going to get in trouble, but
right.
they might if they didn't take the proper diligence to prevent you from getting it.
Right. So that's an interesting thing, right? So let's say, I mean, this is not necessarily a halachic question. I don't think it is. Let's say like you're at your seder, okay, and your head is turned, and you see like the non-Jew sneaking up and reaching for the meat, right? Should you hit it out of his hand? Like that's another philosophical question for the Jew. I mean, we'll have to see how the halakha is formulated when it says we can't feed it to him. Like, does that mean like force feeding? I mean, how does it actually like express itself? Yeah.
The other one seems a little different with the soccer. It seems there like it's almost like saying, to me, like it's potentially one form of feeding it is give it as payment.
That is a good question, which is if, like, practically speaking, does this just mean like davka, a ger toshav, and a hired worker? Like, but if it's just a random non-Jew, then we're okay with it? Or is it, and if it is specifically these two categories, so if it is specifically these two categories, why these two categories? Toshav, you could kind of understand because they're already like part of the nation in a way, they're living with us. But then sachir, like, why that? And if it is all Jews, then why formulate it as toshav and sachir?
If it is
all non-Jews, non-Jews, yeah. But yeah, and it is interesting. I mean, we'll see if what you're saying is halakhically true. That maybe that's why it chose that example, because you're paying him off in meat.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. 11. Yeah.
I guess I'm remembering. I got to where a rabbi, in order to prevent someone from doing the korban, from a non-Jew doing the korban Pesach, tricks him into saying something that reveals he's not a Jew.
Oh,
and the point being is,
so
the rabbi went to the effort to
to stop him. That's interesting. Yeah, okay, so we'd have to look at that if we saw the
question on this. So
yeah.
If, like we were saying yesterday, if part of this whole thing is communal and like what you're trying to do is make sure that you have enough people so you can manage to finish the thing, doesn't that imply that the first, like, you can almost kind of figure these things out, and which implies the reason why they're going to explain this from the fact that the major shiur is that you have to eat it all yourself.
Right.
It should be so much consumed by you that there shouldn't be anything left for you to give it to somebody.
Yeah.
And then they have to, because they know that, they want to make sure that you also don't think, oh, well, I can give it a different designation or status by using it as payment. I'm not giving him korban, I'm giving him payment. And it's almost like trying to tell us it doesn't matter. The point is that doesn't change the fact that you're not yotze for eating the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
You change some of it. You're still, regardless of what, separated from the fact that they're eating it, it's that's causing you to not be eating the portion that you're supposed to be eating.
Right. So ordinarily I would agree with you. The weird thing, and I also don't know much about this, is that, but I was reminded of it yesterday in the psukim. It uses the word ye'achel. I don't remember exactly where. It must be eaten in one house. I believe there is a notion. Again, Okay, I'm ashamed that I don't know this, but I'm also not ashamed because this is Korbanos. But there is, I could be totally wrong here, that there's a notion that with Korban Pesach, there's two things. You as a Jew have mitzvah to eat it, but there's a din in the chefza that it has to be eaten.
Right.
You know, so for example,
by the Jew.
So well that's I think where there's this not gray area, but this questionable area here, that if the thing just has like if you know, it almost reminds me of like someone says like, you know, I don't care who eats it, it just has to be eaten, you know, like there is, so you can envision a situation where you've done your ma'aseh achila, you've done your obligation to eat, but the thing still needs to be eaten, and maybe you could think that you could give it to someone who is.
I would have thought that until these laws came about.
Right.
I mean,
so that shows that these laws are.
That's what I mean.
Oh, okay. I thought.
That's
Okay, yeah.
These laws are there.
I see.
To
qualify how it can be eaten.
Helping you, right? To help you finish understanding exactly what the din is exactly like.
Yeah.
And right.
Okay. Good. All right. Good. Okay. Where are we now? Oh, then we have 11. Shlo yochel mimenu arel. An uncircumcised person may not eat from it. See, this is another interesting thing, right? Is that with the Jews, he says for like number 9, lo yochal mimenu mishumad, an apostate may not eat from it, and 11, an uncircumcised person may not eat from it. But then for the non-Jews, he says not to feed from it to them. So again, it's just consistent here. The lashon is that we can't like give it to him to eat, but I don't know halachically how that form.
So the last one that you just read of the circumcised person can't eat it sounds like that's from the perspective of the chefza of like he can't. That's but because it's not necessarily saying about what we. Well,
it's saying an uncircumcised person may not eat from it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's
So
different than telling us that we can't give it. Because
that's different than saying we can't do it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For the 9 and 11 are for the gavra. 10 would seem to be more in terms of the chefza, if anything. 12 shlo yishbor bo etzem, you may not break a bone in it in the Korban Pesach. 13 shlo yishbor etzem bepesach sheni. Okay, you may not break a bone in the Pesach sheni. So that's another interesting thing. If we wanted to Pesach sheni, which I feel like we're not going to do because I'm not interested in it, it is interesting which halachos apply to both of them and which ones are only for Pesach Rishon. So for example, we saw in this list so far, Pesach Sheni you have to eat with matzah and maror, just like Pesach Rishon. Pesach Sheni you cannot break a bone in, just like Pesach Rishon. But these other things of eating it in a chavurah and not having an apostate eat from it and not having feeding it to a non-Jew and not having an uncircumcised person, Rambam does not list those as separate los ases for Pesach Sheni, only Pesach Rishon.
And at what point do they mean that the bone can't be broken? Is it while it's being shafted?
No, when you're eating it. Oh, I don't know when it starts. Actually, that's interesting. I know that the main issue is when you are eating it.
Okay.
But I don't know if it applies earlier. Okay. Yeah, because the normal activity of breaking the bone. Why would you be breaking the bones?
You can think of a couple of reasons. One maybe just for cooking purposes, like it might help with like releasing like some of the marrow or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So it's really for the marrow.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Is to eat the bone marrow, which is hold on a second, I gotta pause this.
Practical reason.
Resume. Okay. So yeah.
The reason I'm asking is because now I'm thinking of I find it interesting that types of perspective.
Yeah.
Like, is there a difference? Is there a situation where you can say now if it happens to break like the bone
right
at some point? That's what I'm wondering. Also, at what point?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Then maybe that's fine.
Right. So this is kind of why I was saying yesterday that the two areas I kind of want to focus on when we do this is the eating of the Pesach and the shechting of the Pesach, because we read these psukim a lot, but I have no idea what the practical halachos are, stuff like that. And I'm just curious about it. Also, just like, again, philosophically, these are very interesting to me. For example, I recall 2 philosophical interpretations for why you can't break the bone of the Pesach. Anyone know any? Yeah.
You ever heard? One I've heard is, it shows you're animalistic, you're rushing to get the food.
So I've heard you're rushing to get the food, but it's not because of the animalistic thing. It's because of hold on just 1 second. No, I'm confusing things.
Is it a lack of ammonia that we're going to be able to have time like roast it properly and all that and do it correctly?
It's a good question. I mean, there is a rush to eat it, right? Because you have to eat it before chatzos. Right.
That's not a fear of external forces like Mitzrayim or something catching up and killing you. That's
right.
That's just trying to be the fear that Hashem gives you.
Right. Yeah.
It's not a fear from man.
Right. Hold on, I thought I remembered, but I guess I didn't. Yeah, it's something about that though.
I inserted animalistic because it's just what made the most sense of the back idea.
There's something about. I was going to object and say it's something to do with the haste, but I thought we do eat it in haste, so I'm confused about that.
That's why I'm like, there's a different motivation for that.
Right, that's true. Right, haste from fear versus haste from divine command, and then the other interpretation I've heard is that we're supposed to eat it like kings, and kings did not break the marrow to the bones to eat from it.
Unsophisticated.
I don't know if it's unsophisticated or that poor people are kind of desperate to get all the nutrients they can from the meat, and so like kings don't need to do that. Yeah. So either way, but those are both weird interpretations to me. Like it's strange that this should be like a prominent thing, you know. Okay, then 14. Shelo yashir mimenu leboker, not to leave it over until the morning. 15. Shelo yashir pesach sheni leboker, not to leave the pesach sheni over into the morning. 16. Shelo yashir mi basar chagigas yom arba asar ad yom shlishi, not to leave the meat of the chagiga of the 14th, which is the other korban we bring on erev Pesach and have on the seder plate. Not to leave that until the third day. And the explanation of these mitzvos is in these chapters. You want? Maybe I'm actually. I'm going to backtrack. Okay, we were going to read all of the Sefer Mitzvah stuff. I feel like let's pick now. Do we want to start off with Shchitas Pesach stuff or Achilas Pesach stuff? What are we in the mood for?
I figured might as well do Shchita, and if we manage to get to.
Okay, Shchita. One vote for Shchita.
I feel like I shouldn't count.
Okay. Shchita is in order. I mean, right?
The reason I like Shchita is because I feel like if we end up having questions on Achilas, then I might end up wondering if maybe this question really wasn't have been necessary if I'd understood.
Okay, all right, let's do Shchita. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Okay, so let us go. Okay, so turn the page in the packet, and we're going to read now. This is in. Hold on. No. Turn the page to the Minion and Mitzvos page. It should say 16 on the top. Okay. And look at mitzvah nun he. Okay, so nun he is mitzvah say lishchot keves haPesach, to slaughter the sheep of the Pesach. Now, what is weird about that formulation? Lishchot keves haPesach.
Sounds like it's already designated before. It's not.
Okay, that might be. I actually don't know if we can answer that without looking at all the other korbanos, right? Like you might just say that lishchot, this blank hachatas, etc. But based on what we learned yesterday about the kinds of animals.
Oh, you're saying it's not like sorry, I just lost it. Where is it?
Nun he.
Was keves just the general category?
No, so keves is the lamb. Seh is the word that Psukim used, which was a sheep or a goat. So it is weird that he uses the word lamb here, and not the generic one. Yeah, it could be both, right? Shneimar v'shaftu also kol kahal adas Yisrael, that all of the congregation of all of the community of the congregation of Israel shall shaft it. Okay, so that's the formulation there. And then again, if you compare that to the page before, which was in the Koseres, Lishchot HaPesach Bismano, there he just says it generically, Shech the Pesach in its time, not the Keves HaPesach. Yeah, and this is the type of question that like, when we went through all the mitzvos in the Mishnah Torah, and this is the type of subtlety that is just weird. Like the one that makes the most sense is Lishchot HaPesach Bismano, and it makes the most sense because number one, it is not specifying one animal as opposed to the others, and like in other words, it's halachically more true and like it's accurate, So the question is really on the minion of mitzvahs, why he says keves. Yeah, Yosef?
It's like question is rescinded because I was thinking like, are we medayik in translation? Then I was like, Dama.
Yeah, this is like Dama the Mishnah Torah, right? All right. Okay. So now, speaking of translation, go to the next page, which is Sefer Mitzvos, and we'll see what he says in the Sefer Mitzvos. And just quick review here. Rambam says Sefer Mitzvos is not a halacha book. He's not going to spell out all the halachos. So, but there are entries in the Sefer Mitzvos where he has just a one-liner and entries where he has a whole paragraph. What does the Rambam hold? What governs how much the Rambam writes about the mitzvah in the Sefer Mitzvos? In the Mishnah Torah, it's governed by writing all the halachos. Right. But in the Sefer Mitzvos, what governs how much he writes?
There's like one common knowledge.
Close. So the way he says it is he says, I will write enough so that you know what the meaning is of the name of the mitzvah and what that name refers to. So, for example, if he said, little lulav biom tesvav b'tishrei, to take a lulav on the 15th of Nisan or of Tishrei, he would have to explain that means to pick up the 4 species, right? Or likros kriya shema pa'amayim b'chol yom, to read kriya shema twice a day. So he's going to explain only what is necessary. So when you say, hey, what do you mean by kriya shema? He'll tell you what it is. Okay, so let's keep that in mind as we read in Sefer Mitzvos here. So he says, ha-mitzvah ha-chamesh v'ha-chamishim, the 55th positive mitzvah. The mitzvah we've been commanded to offer the Paschal lamb on the 14th, the day of the 14th of Nisan. And that's what God meant when he said, they shall shecht it, the entire congregation of the assembly of Israel in the afternoon. Over al mitzvah zo, and one who transgresses this mitzvah, v'nimna milah hakrivo bismano, and refrains from offering it in its time, b'mezid, intentionally, harizeh chayav kareis. So he's liable for kareis. Ben shehaya ish o isha. Right. So this is one of the rare things, right? There's only 2 mitzvahs to say that you're chayav kareis for violating. This one and the hint is that Klal Yisrael also did this before they got the Torah in Mitzrayim.
Abstain from fruit.
This is no, that's good. That's a good question, but no, that's not one of them. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, let me clarify. They didn't do the avera, they did the mitzvahs to say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Bris milah.
Oh.
Yeah. So bris milah and korban pesach are the only 2 mitzvahs that say that if you intentionally don't do it, then you're liable for kareis. Now, bris milah, you happen to have a time span, because first of all, when you're a baby, it's not your responsibility, right? Really, it's your father's responsibility. The halacha is that if you, once you're, I guess, bar mitzvah, it becomes your responsibility to do it. And if I believe the Rambam says, if you, let me just check. I believe if you die not having it on purpose, then that's when you're chayav. Let me just see here. I forgot how he formulates it. So Hilchos milah.
Kind of hard to imagine it not being on purpose.
No, like I say, you don't know you're Jewish, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, milah mitzvos to say shechayven aleha kareis shnemar va'aral zachar asher lo yimol es basar l'sov v'nichuzah nefesh. Milah is a positive mitzvah that you're obligated, liable for kareis on, as it says, an uncircumcised male that does not circumcise the flesh of his foreskin, that soul will be cut off. Mitzvah al ha'av lamulas beno. It's a mitzvah on the father to circumcise his son. But al harav lamulas kol avadav, and on the master to circumcise all of his servants. Yilid bias umiknas kesef, whether they're servants born in the household or acquired through money. Avar ha'av o ha'adon below malosan. If the father or the master transgresses and does not circumcise them, bitul mitzvah to say. So he has nullified a positive mitzvah. Ve'ino chayv kareis, but he's not chayv kareis. She'ein kareis tali ela ba'aral atmo. Kareis only pertains to the uncircumcised person himself. Based in mitzuvin lamul as oso habein o ha'eved, and based in is commanded to circumcise that son or that servant bismano in its time, and to not leave an uncircumcised person in Israel or among their servants. Okay, and then which is one more halacha here. You're not allowed to circumcise a guy's son without his knowledge. Yeah, also probably
Someone else's son.
Yeah, like Bastien can't do like a Batman vigilante, like swoop in and like circumcise the guy's son who, in the middle of the night, like who refuses to do it. Ella im kain avar v'nimna milulo, unless the father transgresses and refuses, and doesn't circumcise him. Bastien malakinoso bal korcho. Malinoso bal korcho. Bastien can then circumcise against the father's will.
That's what I thought they were talking about in the first place.
Right.
Why else would they do it?
Right. I guess it's a good question, right? I mean, I guess it's saying that if the father, I'm not sure at what point they could do this. Is it after 8 days, or is it once the kid becomes a bar mitzvah and the father's no longer responsible?
You're saying since even though he's over on the real mitzvah, but since I guess the responsibility is still on him until his son.
That's what I'm not sure about. Yeah, I would assume so. I would assume it is, but yeah, I'm not sure when it transfers. Nis alim mi basin. If the basin doesn't know about it, v'lo malo oso, and he's not circumcised, kishi yagdil, when he grows up, hu chayv lamolas atma, he's obligated to circumcise himself.
But it seems like at that point you can't take it has to be in that range because once he's already bar mitzvah.
Right, then it's his responsibility. Exactly. Yeah. V'chol yom vayom shia. Well, it is interesting though because he did say that that beis din is commanded to circumcise that son or that eved in its time. He does say in its time, but he says, but they shouldn't leave an uncircumcised person in Israel nor in their servants. Now, if you had a servant who is an adult, even though he's an adult, beis din is commanded to circumcise him, right? So it is interesting. It does seem like there is an obligation on beis din to make sure that there are no like uncircumcised people running around. But yeah, it is your responsibility. Or walking around for that matter. So once every day that goes by that he transgresses it once he grows up and doesn't circumcise himself, then he negates a mitzvah until he dies and he was uncircumcised and he did it on purpose. Right. So this was, I've mentioned this before, but my roommate in my second year of yeshiva had a non-Jewish father and was raised not Jewish. And so he had to get bris milah in his first year in yeshiva. And that was an ordeal. But he I remember like.
Did he actually do like a full bris milah or did he do like a surgical, like a.
I think he went, I think. Well, I think it's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I know he was under anesthesia. Yeah. But
it was free thanks to the military.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, so but I do remember someone going over this halacha with him because someone had to convince, he was a Baal Tshuva, right? So someone had to convince him, like, man, like, this is kind of kareis, like, and you have to like.
You convinced? I guess I can see that. That's
I mean,
a hard thing.
Yeah, it's a
different thing if you're being Baal Tshuva than when you're converting.
I also think that it wasn't that he was refusing to do it. I think it was that like you want to push it off. Like you don't want to just like the urgency that the Rambam says, like every day that goes by that you're not doing it, then you're chayav, you're over a mitzvos to say, But I also think, just as a side point, there are quite, there's a 8-way, 9-way machlokas on what kareis means. But the Rambam holds kareis means that your soul gets cut off from olam haba. Right, when you die, then instead of your soul going on, then it's like an animal where you just cease existing. Rashi and others hold that it means premature death. Right, so there's like, there's questions on each side. For example, if it's premature death, then what's the difference between kareis and, let's say, like misa b'dei shemayim, where God kills you? But then this is a good example where, like, if you hold the kareis as premature death, then it's kind of a weirdly structured thing where if you die, then you're chayav kareis. Or according to the Rambam, it does make sense.
Is there any status change for the son of a person who's Jewish but not circumcised?
Status change for the son of a person who is Jewish but not circumcised. What do you mean by status change?
Like, is he still Jewish? Is he everything?
He's Jewish. So he's considered an RL, and there are certain ramifications, most notably with Korban Pesach, that he can't eat the Korban Pesach.
The son, the one that's born to the. I'm asking about the son.
Oh, sorry. The son of a person who's not circumcised?
Yeah.
No, there's no ramifications.
Okay,
not that I'm aware of.
And then until that person comes of age where it's his responsibility and he's not circumcised, during that time period, they're saying that he still can't have the korban even in that.
Correct. Period. Yeah. Okay. Back to Sefer Mitzvos here. So, right. So similarly, if you transgress this mitzvah to say and you refrain from shechting it, from offering it in its time, then you're chayav, and you do it with mezi, then you're chayav kareis, whether a man or a woman. We're right after footnote 11 in the text. Lefi shekvar nisbar b'gemar pesachim shepesach rishon chova lanashim v'dov hashabbos. It's been explained in the Gemara of Pesachim that Pesach Rishon is an obligation for women and it pushes aside Shabbos. Klomar hakravaso ba'arba asar shechal lios b'Shabbos kamo kol ish v'ish miYisrael. Okay, in other words, if it falls out on Shabbos, you still do it, and it doesn't matter if it's for a man or a woman. Both of them do it on Shabbos. Yeah.
I always forget to ask. Where was the milah thing?
It was Hilchos milah 1 and 2. Chapter 1 and 2. Muforish bo b'Torah hakareis. and it is explicit in the Torah, the kareis. V'hu amro v'ha'ish asher lo hu tahor v'v'derech lo haya v'chadal la'asos ha'pesach v'nichasa. It says the man who is pure, meaning he's not tameh, and he's v'derech lo haya, and he was not traveling, because traveling and being tameh are things that would exempt you and then make you eligible for Pesach Sheni. V'chadal la'asos ha'pesach, and he refrains from doing the Pesach, v'nichasa, he'll be cut off. Uv'tchilas mesachas krisus kasher manu es ha-mitzvos shechayav ha'over alehin kareis v'hin kulan mitzvos lo saseh amru v'pesach v'milah b'mitzvos saseh. So in the Gemara Krisus, where it says it counts all the mitzvos that you're liable, that those who transgress are liable kareis. All of them are lo saseh except for Pesach and milah, and those are the asayes. We've already given this introduction. And the laws of this mitzvah are explained in Mesachas Pesachim. Let me see where this footnote leads. Okay, fine. We need to do that. Yeah.
Can you like do teshuva on these things like later after if you're? It doesn't almost sound like it if you're cut off. Sounds kind of interesting.
Well, you're only gonna, so you can do tshuva on everything, and the thing is that you be chayiv kareis until you did tshuva, and sins that you're chayiv kareis on, so tshuva is not enough to get kapara. You also need, hold on just a second, I'm just going to read it in Hilchos Tshuva, Perek Aleph. Thank you. Perek Aleph. Halacha Gimel. Sorry, Halacha Daled. Yeah. Alpha Pisha Teshuva Mechaperes Alcohol. So even the Teshuva atones for everything. The Atzmo Sheyom Kippurim Mechaper, and the essence of Yom Kippurim, meaning the day itself, atones. Yesh Aviros Sheim is Kaprin B'Shatan. Yesh Aviros Sheim is Kaprin El B'Zman. Certain Aviros you get immediate kapara. Certain Aviros are you get kapara for later. And now he goes through the 4 categories. Ketad Avar Adam Mitzvos to say Sheim Ba Kareis. If you violate a mitzvah to say that doesn't have kareis, so all mitzvahs to say except for these 2, the asa or even these 2 if you did it unintentionally, right? The asa tshuva, and you do tshuva, inu zaz misham achmochlim miyad. You don't move from there before they forgive you. I mean, you get instant forgiveness. Okay. That's what it says in Yirmiyahu. Return wayward children, I will heal your waywardness. Okay. Second category. If you violate a lo saseh that doesn't have kareis and is also not chayiv misa, v'asa tshuva, and you do tshuva. Tshuva v'yom haKippurim mechaper. Tshuva plus yom haKippurim give you kapara. That's what the pasuk says. On that day, I will atone for you. Okay, so you got to wait till you do tshuva, then wait till Yom Kippur. That was for lo sasehs that are not chayiv kareis and not chayiv misa. Okay, third category is the one that you were asking about. Avar al krisus umisus basin. If you violated something that's chayiv kareis or something that gets the death penalty, vasa teshuva, and you did tshuva. Tshuva yom kippurim tolin. Here's tolin, hanging, right? Tshuva and yom kippurim hang in the balance. Okay, yeah, tolin. The Yisurin Habain Alav Gomrin Laha Kapara, and the afflictions that befall him complete the atonement.
Oh, so he's got to the kareis still must come?
No, so you do get the kareis removed, but you need a certain amount of afflictions. Okay. And that's going to be like from God, you know, and then the kapara is completed. So the fact that the kapara is completed, that implies Tshuva and Yom Kippur give you some kapara, but you don't reach your full measure of kapara until you get these afflictions.
Is it implied at all that it would that affliction would happen before that, starting from when Teshuva, but finishing by the next Yom Kippur, or is there no knowing?
I don't. The Rambam doesn't address it. I don't know if Chazal address it. I'm not sure. But he does say though, Olam ein kapara lo kapara gemura ad sheyabu olav yisurin. But you cannot get complete kapara until the afflictions befall you. Uveilu nemar, and regarding these, it says upakarati b'shevet pisham uvinagaim avonam. I have I think here pakarati means to exact punishment. I've exacted with a rod their rebellious sin, and with afflictions their iniquity. And then the last case, or really, this is not really a 4th level, but it's Bamei Devar Memurim. When are we talking about? up until now. That's when you did not do a chil Hashem when you transgressed. About machal es Hashem, but if you desecrated the name of God, even though you did tshuva, and Yom Kippur arrived, and you're standing in your tshuva, and you get afflictions. You can't get complete kapara until you die. Ella, rather, tshuva b'yom kippurim v'yisurin, rather tshuva, Yom Kippurim, and afflictions, shloshtan tolin, all three of them hang, umisa mechaperes, and death atones. Shneimar, as it says, v'nigle b'oznai Hashem tzavakos, im yichubar avon hazeh lachem ad tmusun. It says, it was revealed in the ears of Hashem, Master of Legions, if their iniquity will be atoned until they die. That's for Chil Hashem, yeah.
And what are they calling Chil Hashem again?
So Chil Hashem, the Rambam has three categories of Chil Hashem, which Pesach talked about in the Sunday shiur. One is if you're obligated to give up your life in a situation where you're obligated to give up your life and you don't. So that's a Chil Hashem.
That makes sense that mitzvah would be the
right, because that's what you needed to do, right? Second one is if you do an avera as a rebellious act against God, not out of taiva, but just to spite God.
Wow, okay.
And the third one is if you are someone who has a reputation for being like exceedingly pious, and you do things that make people like that create a bad reputation or they make people upset at you, even if they're not averos. Like that's like the vernacular.
Like this guy who not wanting to get a son, not wanting to get married so they wouldn't have a son, and anyone else that wouldn't be necessarily a mitzvah thing for him.
It could be. I'm not familiar with the story, but yeah.
Two more quick questions.
Sure.
For the one where it's about affliction, and that's how you recover.
Yeah.
How do you know? Is there a formula for knowing? Like, yeah, I did my affliction.
Yeah, so there's no formula for knowing how much affliction you need, but the Gemara does deal with the question of what's the minimal level of annoyance that would still be considered to be one of these afflictions. Okay. And so the two examples it gives is so one is if you put on your shirt inside out. Okay, and then and then the other one is a funny one. I think this is an interesting thing. If you reach into your pocket, let's say you're reaching in your pocket and you try to get a quarter, but you get a nickel. Okay, but it says if you reach into your pocket to try to get a nickel and you get a quarter, that's not an affliction, right? Because that's better, right?
Imagine.
Yeah, so the Gemara, that's the only thing. It could be that the Gemara does answer your question, but that's the only thing.
Right. And then the last question. For the fact that there's only two things that you separate cars for, and that they're both Pesach related,
yeah,
it would make me think that the reason being over on this milah is one of them is mainly because it contributes to you being then over on by consequence on Pesach.
Interesting. Right. It is interesting how that direction, there is a one directionality that if you don't do milah, you can't do Pesach.
Right.
But if you don't do Pesach, you can still do milah. So that lends support to what you're saying. Yeah.
What other, what lotus is good cars? So there's Shabbos and,
there's a list.
Okay.
I have a PowerPoint with the list. Yeah. Like in the Purim video, but maybe we go over them. Yeah, it is a slideshow. I'll show you really quickly.
You should have one of those old black and white, like the 3, 2, 1, and then
right, that'd be good. So I mean, according to my understanding, then all of the things that you're chayav on, you don't have to write a source for this. All the things that you're chayav misa on, you also get kareis. Until you get the punishment. But then the things that you're chayav just kareis on are as follows. 21 of them. Okay, so hold on a second. Why is this make okay? Gilu rayas between a man and his sister. Between a man and his father's sister, between a man and his mother's sister, between a man and his wife's sister. And by the way, it says, it goes on both sides.
Incest.
Yeah, incest. Between a man and his brother's wife, between a man and his father's brother's wife, between a man and a woman who is a nida. This is the most common, I would say, probably one of the more common things that Jews are chayav kares for, like, that actually happened. Yeah, I mean, I know incest happens also, but not nearly as much as nida. Yeah. Eating chalev, that's the forbidden fat. Eating dam. Eating chametz on Pesach. That's probably another one that's
so crazy that it's in the same level.
I know, right? Yeah, when you see it like that, eating on Yom Kippurim, doing malacha on Yom Kippurim, eating nosar, which is leftover korban, eating pigul, which is a similar thing, eating korbanos while you are tameh, entering the courtyard of Mikdash while you're tameh, slaughtering korbanos outside of Mikdash, offering korbanos outside of Mikdash, preparing the shemen hamishcha for personal use. Guilty. No. Anointing yourself with the shemen hamishcha for personal use, and then preparing Koseres for personal use. So you see an interesting thing here, by the way. I think
how is 20 and 19 different?
20 is the shemen hamishcha. Oh, sorry. 19 is, one is making it. The other one's anointing yourself.
Okay. I would imagine that I prepared it so that I would then.
Right, but each one is chayav. I mean, what if you found it that was already prepared?
Right. No, I'm saying I would have learned even then. I would have learned that from the fact that I prepared it. Like, okay, and if I find it, it's also.
Yeah.
Was it from Misha and Mishra?
Shemen hamishcha.
Like how can we show Mishra if you don't have the intention to make it for Shem Mishra?
Well, no. Oh, you mean? I see
How
what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. But just to refute what you just said, Chizkiyahu, is that you see that there's not a corresponding one for preparing the Koseres, right? Yeah, like smelling the Koseres for personal use is not high of kareis.
Oh, so there's a premeditation aspect, and there they'll punish that. But
yeah.
When the case of involuntary manslaughter, in the case of Koseres, there they won't.
Yeah. Okay, good. And by the way, just before we stop for today, when I was saying in the beginning that the way to make the Mishnah Torah yours is to go through each of the mitzvos with the 4 sources. The other way to make the Mishnah Torah yours is to do what we just did, which is whenever you have a question, you go to that area in the Mishnah Torah, and what ends up happening is you link all the mitzvos in your mind. Like, so the fact that you were asking all these questions, that we went from place to place to place, that's how you build this knowledge. And it's much more, the Mishnah Torah is a tool that lends itself to that more so than the Gemara. Like, let's say, like you asked me a question over WhatsApp the other day about where to find something in the Gemara. Gemara is not organized conceptually. Mishnah Torah is. So it becomes very easy to just know.
And they are confined what Masechta to go and look into.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All righty. Have a good rest of the day.
Methodology, actually.
Yeah.